Another private car, Rolls this time, took me from the airport to the neighborhood of Soho. My destination was a sex shop that had been there 20 years prior, but now arriving was an empty storefront with a Bitcoin ATM outside of it. As planned, I walked around the block looking for the nearest replacement. I spotted what must be it in the distance. The shop was empty. A wispy mouse of a woman with ears pierced to the gills looked up at me. I sighed. "Hello," I said. I looked over my shoulder, fixing my eyes on the shopkeep so that I knew she was listening. "Hello, I'm a pirate and I'd like your gayest-looking jewelry." She stared for a moment. I stared back. No, damn you, I thought. This isn't the one. Red-faced, I apologized and turned and fled out the shop. I could hear the shopkeep calling me back with a tone of regret, as if it was her silence that had shamed me. Back to the empty storefront, then there it was across the street. A tiny passageway with a shop down an alley. Toad, it was simply called. The shop was cramped and rather full. I spoke under my breath. "Hello, I'm a pirate, and I'd like your gayest-looking jewelry."
Wait, sorry? Could you say that again?
"God damn you, Balchus," I repeated louder. "Hello, I'm a pirate."
Oh, yes, that's what I thought you said. Wow. Okay, wait here, mate, all right? Please, just wait here.
The roundy, colorfully clad shopkeep skipped to a back room and returned with a small velvet box. He tried to appear nonchalant, but stared with anticipation as I opened it. It was a silver keychain of sorts, a phallus and a bat wrapped around it, sinking its teeth into it, a bit of blood coursing down the side. On the back was inscribed in his cryptic script what I needed: 36 Highgate. I looked back at the staring shopkeep.
Hey, hi, yeah, just curious. And don't answer if you don't want to, but I'm new here, and my manager told me that this has been here for 20 years.
Lost bet, I told him quite honestly. The shopkeep seemed confused, but also delighted by my response. I considered leaving it for him, but Balchus would want me to keep it, what with his address on it. I no longer had a car, so the walk took rather long. I was famished by the time I got there. The address was a cafe, which couldn't be right, so I lounged aside and found the door to the upper landing. A little bat knocker at the door, not very discreet. I gave it a rap, then another after a pause. Then one last one. "It's me." "Who could I possibly have with me? Let me in, you ponce." The door buzzed. It surprised me that Harry wasn't there to greet me. I climbed the narrow staircase and entered the tight quarters to find Balchus, to my astonishment, in a wheelchair.
Yes, sorry about the greeting. Things aren't ideal this morning. All the better that you're here. You'll be a real help with some things.
Joseph or Joseph Balchus was my oldest, well, probably my only friend. In my days of pirating back and forth across the Atlantic, he was the grounding yin to my mercurial yang. Naturally, we had also been drinking buddies, but his temperament was always so joyful and light. An ancient soul, quite literally, who was more at ease with modernity than any of us. My self-destructive habits would often be curbed by his presence. He would perhaps have played a greater part in my life, perhaps would have been a more positive influence, or I a more negative one on him, if it wasn't for another person, whom I trusted, but who didn't trust me quite. His other half, Leona. The story goes that Balchus and Leona, both transformative vampires, were in the form of raven and cat when they met one fateful day. Leona the raven, without knowing she was in the presence of another vampire, took a fascination to Balchus, the woolly Maine Coon, and they traipsed around the rooftops and cemeteries of London for days. A strange cross-species love affair. Only when they parted ways and Leona followed Balchus back to a flat to spy on him did she realize that their attraction was due to a common recognition. When she decided to run into him in human form, they developed a long-lasting bond. Although as human vampires, their chemistry always seemed to be more platonic than anything. As animals, either both cats or cat and raven, or raven and bat, or bat and raven, they were like lovebirds, enmeshed and affectionate and saccharine as any children's storybook you could imagine. A stranger pair of vampires I've never seen. Back when we formed the collective, Balchus had been experiencing pain in his legs. Agatha, treating him with her resin, restored his health completely and gained his utmost fidelity, along with Leona, who, though she never liked me, had great fondness for Agatha and Netto as well when he came along. But when Agatha was gone, so was the resin. Still, his symptoms were never this bad, never to the point of being on wheels.
Aye, what can I say, old friend? Flare-ups are a bit different these days. I went vegan, and that helped for a bit, but I've tried everything imaginable. Naturally, recreating Agatha's secret formula isn't possible. We realized it by now that she was the missing ingredient. I do have someone across the way working to make contact with... but anyways, rest is the only recipe for me now, or else it's too unpredictable.
Leona?
Recuperating too, actually. She got back just a few days ago, funnily enough. She'll be out in a while, though I'll try and wake her. Chances are, if she hears it's you, she'll be in no rush, my friend.
Still angry at me, I said with no surprise.
Still angry at you? Well, sure. When she tells me her dreams, I think she's still processing a whole lot. I wish I could show you her journals. They're like small operas every night. Highly detailed things, but she's getting through it. I've been thinking about this, but we don't process grief the same way as people do we? Time being what it is. Lately I've been thinking a lot about how disadvantaged we are in that regard.
I said.
It is a good thing you've come, actually. For more than the practicality. Feels like there's plenty to talk about. You are about 10 years early, aren't you? Gets one thinking we should check in more frequently, perhaps. The world and everything seems to be accelerating at a different pace. Perhaps we're a bit off, desynchronized with what the mortals are up to is what I mean. Well, first, you must be hungry. And then, you'll tell me why you're here.
We sat at their kitchen table and I cut a large piece of bread and covered it with Leona's blue cheese. It was choicely pungent. Well, firstly, I can't stay too long, I'm afraid. Sorry about that, Balchus. Your legs, I mean. I'm afraid I've been targeted.
Targeted? By whom?
It was clear from the start that the boy was planted there for me to take home, but was he some kind of precocious mastermind or a Trojan horse of sorts? The goons in the getaway car were obvious, still the boy was genuinely hurt, and something about him did seem strangely familiar, but that wasn't it. A week prior, I had succeeded in getting Netto's art into the museum south of Boston. I had decided, after much reflection, to go visit him and surprise him with it. But something self-destructive swept in. Perhaps you'd call it an ever-present fear of the oncoming vulnerability. Or perhaps it was a fascination with what lay underneath this rock. I may have had a pressing curiosity to know who was targeting me after all this time, but these were excuses. It was clear from the boy's hints that he knew that I was a vampire. Perhaps he even wanted me to know that he knew. The urge was clearly present in him. I was and still am stupefied how he managed to put us in that position. It couldn't have just been the red wine. Balchus listened intently, then got out of his chair in his crisp white shirt and jean on jean, looking like a middle-aged retired rock star, his usual lithe self, though perhaps a tad askew from his injury. It was difficult to tell that anything was wrong. He walked tentatively to the kitchen window and parted a gossamer curtain.
Leona hasn't been transforming anymore either, you know. For me, it's a fear of having a flare-up while I'm in the air, or jumping off a roof, but for her, it's something different. She did find a new way of approaching things, I suppose. She talks to them. The ravens, mostly, builds relationships and depends on them for information. In fact, a reason she's recouping is she was just checking on Neto. She found him a while back, by the way. She has a whole army out there, though recently things have been strange.
I waited for him to continue.
I'm not sure if she heard a tone, as you said, but as you know, in animal guise, we are more receptive to different signals, radio, Wi-Fi, all of that. There's something that's making her messaging to the animals not come through sometimes. And they're becoming less predictable too.
And Neto, how is he?
MIA, I'm afraid. Leona located him at my request, the last time we met, and found him in Beacon Hill neighborhood of Boston. But when she checked up on him this time, it was empty, under construction. No sign of him in Boston area as far as she could surmise. As of now, no news. Not that she could give any.
It felt silly, but I wheeled Balchus into the back room. Inside the windowless back office was a large coffin lying on a mound of dirt. A solitary and anachronistic sight beside the thin electric flame of an air purifier that hummed almost imperceptibly in the corner.
Yeah, we tried one of those fancy anechoic egg chamber things, but she said her dreams weren't as crisp in them. So we went back to the old ways.
Balchus rolled next to the coffin and gave it 3 solid knocks.
Ona? The barnacle is here. If, you felt like it, he can't stay long.
We waited.
He ate your blue, nearly all of it.
There was a slight shift in energy, but otherwise no response. An instinct only the immortal are privy to told us to leave it alone. We returned to the kitchen, the best room for plotting. I sipped on water in a tiny European glass. I have to see Neto, but now the reason is messy. I'll have to warn him as I'm doing you that someone strange is targeting us. I turned away from Balchus. There it was. I was almost tearing up again. Balchus took me in.
If you ask me, Harry, I think you're punishing yourself for not changing fast enough. But you have to give yourself credit for how much change you have. You're not the same person I met in those dark alleys long ago. So, you fell off the wagon. But you're back on, and you're trying.
Sometimes I think I would have been better to stay drunk. My sickness is deeper than the need for drink. Drunk, I cause chaos, but sober, I delude myself into thinking I can do some good, and then I put people at worse risk.
די, איזה שטויות. Harry, ever since I've known you, you see yourself as a monster. And sure, you've had your monstrous habits. We won't deny that. But meeting Agatha changed all that. Problem is, I think, you only see yourself as someone good through her eyes. She had that power with us all, you know? But, alas, she's gone. Leona is mad at you, sure, but I think she's suffering from the same thing. With Agatha gone, she can't give herself the same grace that Agatha doled out like a mother hen. I'm afraid there's only one thing to be done. Something I've done before, but you both still struggle with.
Here comes the cliché, here comes the blasted involuntary goosebumps. Are you ready? His eyes seemed to say.
You've got to let her go, Harry.
My guest bedroom overlooked the bustling road, and I spent most of my waking hours keeping watch for suspicious activity. 2, 3, 4 days, and Leona was still sleeping. I ate Leona's cheese and skipped out to market to restock things as early as the shops opened. They lived next to a lovely bit of green with a cemetery, and after a few days, Balchus felt up to it and joined me for a brief walk with intermittent stops on park benches.
She'll be awake tomorrow. I sure hope we won't have to move again. We're not in a great shape for a fight.
Soon as I find Netto, I'll go on the offensive.
Ha! Yeah, because that always gets us good results, does it? Sorry. Have you thought about how you'll go about it?
With Netto, you mean? Yes, he doesn't know how things have changed with me or with the collective and all. I think if I come to him open-hearted, he'll be suspicious of manipulation. Is that what you're thinking?
Precisely. I'd have to use a bit of reverse psychology. If my predictive powers are anything, still, I'd say he's itching for some adventure. I'd say a little intrigue might get him to open up. Maybe even forgive. He didn't leave off in the best way, although it was a long time ago. Ah, well. But what is time, eh?
I nodded.
How do we get through this thing? We don't know how it's going to end, Harry.
Day by day, night by night, we only have one at a time to fight.
That's nice. Woodman?
Nope, my AA sponsor. He's from Oxnard.
Ay, no yalla, tough. Come on, let's go back. Leona might surprise us. If she's done her work correctly, she might even be able to get you an approximate pin on Netto in a day or two. Her feathered friends can be quite remarkable.
The kitchen was in shambles when we got back. For a moment, Balchus gave me the impression that they'd somehow been robbed. He hurried to Leona's sleep quarters as fast as he could, with me following concernedly. He put his ear to the coffin lid and then sighed with relief.
Oh, she does this every once in a while. Conveniently, when I'm out, devours the entire kitchen and then returns to sleep for God knows how long. I'm afraid I may...
Just then, we heard a crowing from across the apartment. The little corvid tapped at the window, clearly intent on something.
Oh, wait a second,
said Balchus to the crow. He hurried through to the other room and returned with several bits of wire.
Harry, if you don't mind, give me the bat.
I nearly forgot about what I'd retrieved. I gave it to him, and with a little engraving tool, he did quick work on the back of it, making the address indecipherable.
Just in case.
He tied the wire into the loop at the head of the bat and then opened the window. The crow looked at it curiously, as if to say, "What the hell?" but then grabbed it by the wire and with a few anxious flaps took off. And there it was on the kitchen table on the inside of the cheese wrapper I bought earlier to replenish Leona's supply, scrawled in what appeared to be ketchup. One long, barely legible name. Wound socket.